The holographic feed snapped into existence mid-sentence. Tavrok's voice already thunderous, the image distorted for half a second before stabilizing. And for these crimes, there can be no forgiveness. The emissary towered in the transmission, clad in ceremonial Drekovan battle robes, angular black armor trimmed in crimson, with twin crests of bone protruding from his shoulder plates. His thick stone-gray skin was marked with bioluminescent tribal sigils pulsing in a pattern designed to evoke fear in lesser species. His yellow, vertical slit eyes bored into the camera. This footage was captured 72 hours ago, Tavrok declared. The feed cut to raw visuals. A scorched alien village, smoke spiraling from shattered spires, bodies, some humanoid, others grotesquely inhuman, littered across the ruins. Screams echoed from the recording. The next image showed a human dropship, clearly marked with UED insignias, lifting off under plasma fire. In the UED command chamber in Node Post, Earth's primary orbital defense station, the room had gone silent. Chancellor Zach Bravik stood at the center, arms locked behind his back, brow tight. His silver-gray uniform bore no medals, by design. Beside him, Admiral Yavid Cage stared at the feed, jaw clenched. His dark blue eyes tracked every second of footage, unmoving. Around them, commanders and aides muttered curses, traded looks of disbelief, and stared wide-eyed at the screen. "This can't be real," muttered Commander Cillian Noor, a lean man from the Mars Frontier Divisions. No one answered. The broadcast shifted again. Images of a colony on Valek Prime collapsing under orbital bombardment. Shrieking Valek civilians, plated four-armed creatures with translucent fins stretching from their jaws to their collars, scrambled for cover as kinetic strikes turned glass towers to rubble. Then Tavrok's voice returned, low and venomous. Humanity has shown its nature, primitive, violent, unfit for a shared galaxy. The Confederation Drekovan will not wait for this infection to spread. Across hundreds of systems, thousands of species tuned in. Tavrok's voice echoed from domed cities on Kalis Prime, through floating markets on Isern 5, into the subsonic relays of water-breathing cultures beneath the oceans of Gluck. As of this transmission, Tavrok said, the Confederation declares war on the species known as Homo sapiens. Their homeworld and all affiliated colonies are now targets. Eradication is not our goal. It is a necessity. Back in the UED chamber, Bravik turned his head just slightly. He's not bluffing. He's reading from a script, Cage growled. This is a preamble. He has fleets in position, Bravik replied. I'd bet my life on it. And then, almost on cue, the station's alert systems screamed. Red icons blinked alive across every holotable. A lieutenant barked from across the chamber. Multiple warp signatures, outer sectors, Proxima Chain, Eridani Loop, and Andaris Reach, all lighting up. Admiral Cage didn't hesitate. Full alert, scramble interceptors, activate orbital shield command now. The feed continued. Tavrok was still speaking, still performing his ritualistic justification. But the war had already begun. In the outer systems, stations blinked off the grid one after another. Human outposts, Horizon Station in the Eridani Belt, the Terraform Hub on Damasur 4, the mining array at Sigma Argo, all reported first contact within 90 seconds of each other. Then nothing. No chatter, no distress calls, just silence. On Eos 3, a fledgling colony in Andaris Reach, the sky split open as Drekovan carriers emerged from slip space, flanked by angular frigates belonging to the Zarn, a hive-minded species with bronze-colored carapaces and spiked hind legs that clicked like metal blades across steel. Without hesitation, the fleet opened fire. Colonists didn't have time to board escape ships. Back at Earth Command, the holotable flooded with red zones. Bravik leaned over to the operations console. Get me feeds from Andaris Reach. An image snapped into view. The colony's central dome crumpled inward like an eggshell under pressure. Flames burst outward. Ships, civilian transports were scattering in every direction, half of them already trailing smoke or breaking apart under Drekvan plasma lances. "Damn it," Cage growled. "They launched before the message ended." "They wanted a verdict, not a trial," Bravik said. The chamber was chaos now. Strategists shouted over each other, holograms flickering with conflicting data, maps updating faster than anyone could process. Every screen screamed a different emergency. Commander Noor was already coordinating the activation of Luna's missile grid. Commodore Gao, a burly square-jawed officer with cybernetic implants running along his left temple, yelled for orbital drones to reroute and shield vulnerable stations. A young female comms officer, Ensign Vera Delane, called out from her terminal. "Sir, multiple distress signals from outer colonies. Civilians requesting evacuation corridors." "They won't make it," Gao said coldly. Bravik turned. "We buy them time." Cage barked at the room. "Reroute Third Fleet from Jovian space. I want Interceptor wings Theta and Omega in launch tubes now. I need boots on the ground in Caldron. Those people are trapped." "Sending the order," Delane confirmed, fingers flying across the terminal. Another feed blinked open. This time, an orbital view of Ceres Way. Human defense ships, smaller than their alien counterparts but faster and more maneuverable, were locked in vicious dogfights. A Drekvan dreadnought fired its rail beam straight through a human cruiser's midsection. The cruiser split, spun, and detonated, fire lighting the stars. But the human forces weren't surrendering. A squadron of assault fighters dove into the dreadnought's blind zone. One pilot, Lieutenant Mason Halden, manually overloaded his reactor and dove into the enemy's engine bay. The screen turned white with the explosion. "Status on his wing?" Cage asked. "3 ejected, 2 still transmitting. He bought us 40 seconds, don't waste it." At the edge of the Sol system, near the Kepler relay, a human relay station, built more for data than for combat, stood between the incoming fleet and Earth. It should have been vaporized in minutes. Instead, Commander Ronak Dre's defense team rerouted reactor output into an untested plasma inversion grid, a risky maneuver that could backfire at any moment. But it worked. The first volley of Drekvan torpedoes exploded before impact, diffused by the reactive field. Dre had no idea if it would work twice. He didn't wait. "All crew to pods. AI, initiate code black contingency. Get this station's logs back to Luna Command." And then, without ceremony, he triggered the auto-destruct and launched every available escape pod at random vectors. The Kepler station went up in a silent wave of blue fire, taking 2 enemy fighters with it. On the surface of Mars, in the military research installation beneath the Vale's shield dome, Colonel Bryce Soren received the order directly from Cage's AI liaison. "Colonel, DefenseNet has collapsed in Eridani. We've lost the outer moons. High Command authorizes countermeasures." Soren nodded once. "Activate Protocol Iron Howl. Initiate drone swarm sequencing. All units to launch bays." His officers complied. They were young, barely 30, but trained with precision. No one panicked. No one asked if Earth would fall. They just moved. Back at Node Post, as the room recalibrated to full combat operations, Bravik finally turned from the screen. "Admiral," he said, voice like stone, "if Tavrock wants to erase humanity, we don't give him a clean shot." Cage nodded, already issuing new orders. He picked a fight with the wrong species. No one else spoke, but the fire in the room shifted. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it had been converted into motion, into action. A single pulse, deep and low, echoed through the hull of every military station in the inner solar perimeter. Enemy warp signatures inbound, vector confirmed. Sectors Helix 4 through Cordan 9. Time to contact, 2 minutes. Inside the core strategic command deck of Node Post, Admiral Yaved Cage stood flanked by Generals Derek Ton and Amir Volton. All 3 stared at the rotating holographic map now overflowing with hostile fleet icons. Each crimson triangle represented an incoming vessel. Dozens more appeared every second. Cage didn't blink. "Full defense grid online. Execute Fortress Protocol. Divert all reactor capacity to station shielding and kinetic batteries." Volton turned without hesitation. Authorize orbital autocannon array. Bring Citadel 7 rail platforms to firing status. The deck ignited with motion. Commanders barked orders. Technicians ran calculations in real time. AI nodes lit up with task overloads and emergency rerouting codes. Earth's moon stations went dark, every ounce of energy redirected into long-range defensive relays. Along the asteroid line between Mars and Jupiter, automated drone fields surged to life, activating like a wall of dormant hornets suddenly roused. A transmission bled through the alert noise. This is UED Forward Outpost Vorta 3. We are under heavy fire. Multiple unknown class ships, requesting immediate... Static. Then nothing. Across the Beltline, on Titan's orbital relay dock, Lieutenant Cal Redden was already inside a fast deployment pod when the first wave slammed into the defense grid. The ship lurched. The pod launched anyway. Behind him, the station's upper decks ruptured under Drekovan torpedoes, sections torn open like metal peeled by claws. Inside the pod, Cal checked his harness, powered up his HUD, and activated comms. Echo Squad, confirm drop. Green, came Sergeant Lane's voice. Copy that. Target's still the surface bunker. We get the science crew out or we don't come back. Understood. The pod slammed into Titan's surface hard enough to crack its outer shell. The team burst out, weapons hot. On the horizon, Drekovan drop pods, sleek, bone-colored, and covered in tribal etchings, descended like guided meteors. Clock's ticking, Cal muttered. Move. At Node Post, General Ton activated the Earth Defense Matrix. From above the northern hemisphere, a triangular formation of Earth's remaining top-tier destroyers broke orbit. UED Sabaton, Osiris, and the Quetzalcoatl. All three accelerated toward the outer defense line. Target priority, heavy assault craft. Interceptor squadrons engage only with permission, Ton said. Enemy fleet composition? Cage asked. Mostly Drekovan flagships, some Zarn support swarms. But we've got Cellar-class jammers too. Visuals are degrading. The Cellar were mercenary raiders, six-limbed insectoids with silicon-armored exoskeletons and no discernible allegiance. Their ships emitted pulse wave interference that scrambled sensors and delayed targeting systems. Then we go analog, Cage ordered. Switch to predictive targeting algorithms. Run old combat AI packages from the Arcadia Wars, and keep transmission lines to Mars Command hardwired. No wireless. A few commanders hesitated. General Gao didn't. You heard him. Do it. Now. In orbit over Europa, the assault ship Artemis took a direct plasma beam through its hangar. Half its bays exploded, but Captain Andrei Sharif rerouted cooling systems from non-essential sectors and force-booted every remaining thruster. His ship, smoking and crippled, rammed itself into a Drekovan frigate. Both exploded. 3 seconds later, a pair of UED stealth corvettes decloaked from the debris field and flanked the distracted enemy destroyer. The trap worked. The corvettes opened up with Gauss cannons at close range, turning the Drekovan hull into slag. From the UED feed, Vera Delane's voice crackled over comms. Target down. Captain Sharif's sacrifice cleared a path, sending evac code to Europa facility. Back on Earth, Cage leaned over the operations display, eyes sharp. They thought they'd catch us paralyzed. They didn't expect doctrine variance. Ton added, their war plans don't account for this kind of improvisation. Cillian Noor, now overseeing mid-orbit coordination, chimed in over secured channel. Interceptors reporting multiple alien craft retreating beyond engagement range after first contact. I think they expected a rout. Then make them regret that mistake, Cage replied. On the surface of the Martian colony Calden's Reach, evac sirens howled, while armored columns of human ground forces held the line against approaching alien walkers, towering multi-legged siege engines operated by the Morvax. The Morvax were aquatic-born, adapted to high gravity with thick, glistening hides and external respirator rigs. Their ships resembled coiled crustaceans wrapped in glowing blue armor. Colonel Devon Stratt turned to his XO. "Bring the Hydra batteries online. Forget the perimeter grid. We focus fire on the legs." "But sir, if they breach, they'll breach anyway. We take them out now, or the civvies don't make it to the sub-shuttles." 3 massive kinetic launchers spun to life behind him. The first round fired. It missed. The second struck a Morvax walker's joint with a shuddering explosion. The third collapsed the entire engine's front legs. The walker tipped forward, impaling itself on the colony's energy tower. It flared, screeched, a deep metallic groan, then detonated. Behind them, dropships roared into the sky with evacuees. Still, it wasn't enough. Loss reports poured in. Ceres Way, under siege. Outpost Helion 2, silent. 75% of Damas Orphe's orbital infrastructure had fallen in under 20 minutes. Civilian death counts climbed into the tens of thousands. Admiral Cage didn't look away from the data. "Gao, how long until our second wave intercepts?" 40 minutes. "That's best case. We won't last that long on brute force." "Understood," Gao replied. "I've got an idea." Within 2 minutes, Gao's team rerouted emergency reactor cores from unmanned asteroid stations in the belt, rigged them into high-speed drone relays, and launched them toward the rear of the incoming fleet. The payload wasn't a weapon, yet. It was a decoy, a radiological signature designed to mimic the power core of a fully armed dreadnought. The Drekvan took the bait. 5 cruisers broke formation to intercept, and that was when Earth's real countermeasure hit. From behind the gas giant Nixos, a stealth-fitted human cruiser, the Drakkar, unveiled its presence and fired a full payload of experimental cryo-piercers. The alien ships froze mid-burn, their shields collapsing under the extreme temperature shock. One of the Drekvan ships tried to retreat, but a squadron of UED fighters cut across its flank, targeting its exposed fuel line. The blast lit up the sky above the belt. In the node post war room, Cage watched as flickers of blue replaced swathes of red on the holographic map. The offensive wasn't over. Not even close. But they'd drawn blood. And for the first time in 2 hours, the tide wasn't pushing only one way. A tactical report burst across the secure channel, interrupting the brief lull that had gripped Node Post. Commander Rune's fleet at Ceres Way reports sustained resistance. Enemy formation broken. Human survivors holding Sector Grid 3E against 2-to-1 odds. Inside the command war room, Admiral Yavid Cage leaned closer to the holomap. Red sectors had started to flicker with blue pulses. The enemy had expected collapse. Instead, they found pockets of human resistance that refused to break. In the silence, General Gao pointed at the updated telemetry. "That's our chance. They overextended, and they're realizing it too late." "Then we make sure it's too late," Cage replied. Out beyond the belt line, in Sector Ymir 9, the UED frigate Fenrir fought for every second. Its hull was scorched and bleeding oxygen, but Captain Dallin Cade had rerouted atmospheric systems to reinforce pressure seals, buying them time. His crew, soaked in sweat and adrenaline, had mounted salvaged Drekvan hull plating to cover their starboard flank. They weren't supposed to survive the first encounter. Instead, they disabled 3 enemy scouts, then used their debris to mimic a destroyed ship and strike from below with short-range coil guns. From the Drekvan side, reports began to show a pattern. Human resistance units display erratic but effective pattern disruption. One translated command log read, "Conventional engagement strategies insufficient. Recommend recalibration." But there wasn't time for recalibration. From Node Post, Chancellor Zach Bravik moved fast. He met with UED internal advisors via secure line, rerouting encrypted comms through Europa's subterranean relay tunnels. No aids. No interruptions. Just raw intel flowing in. He'd spent years cultivating silent allies, smugglers, ex-intel agents, former diplomats blacklisted from the Central Galactic forums. All of them now fed him fragments, fleet signatures inconsistent with the public manifestos, command delays within certain Drekvan formations, conflicting orders from inner council members. Too much divergence for a unified offensive, Bravik muttered. They're covering something. Within an hour, the tide shifted. Cage coordinated with generals across 4 sectors to launch a coordinated counteroffensive, not meant to retake territory, but to punch holes. Strategic strikes at their comm nodes, supply routes, and tactical relays. Target their assumptions, not just their ships, Cage ordered. General Gao assembled 2 task forces, Hammer Unit led by Captain Sen Raiden and Ghost Unit under Major Lennox Vale. Their objective: identify Drekovan fleet anchors, vessels coordinating attack patterns via pulse sync, and neutralize them. In orbit above the gas giant Celarus, Hammer Unit executed a slingshot maneuver using the planet's magnetic field. As they came out of the curve, their warships blasted the Drekovan lead cruiser in under 15 seconds. Communications in that sector broke instantly, leaving surrounding enemy ships confused and out of sync. Meanwhile, on the edge of the Neuraxis expanse, Ghost Unit infiltrated a relay array disguised as a damaged trade beacon. Vale's team launched synchronized jamming pulses that caused Drekovan reinforcements to misalign their entry vectors by thousands of kilometers, missing their intended battlefield entirely. Fleet fragmentation confirmed, came the ops report from Vera Delane. Sector 2C collapsed. No enemy regroup detected. Cage grinned grimly. Now we cut deeper. Sabotage teams mobilized. Among them, the UED's 8th Special Infiltration Division, led by Captain Kano Fury, was launched toward a forward Drekovan control node stationed on the shattered moon of Varn's Gate. Fury was the kind of soldier the UED used when diplomacy failed, and the objective required silence, speed, and ruthlessness. Varn's Gate was a fortress carved into the jagged crust of a half-destroyed celestial body. Its atmosphere was unstable, the magnetic interference immense, but it housed a key Drekovan coordination AI system. The drop was blind. Their insertion pods hit the surface through a cloud of static. Within seconds, they were met with resistance. Armored Drekovan foot soldiers known as the Surak, bred for siege defense. Bipedal, broad-shouldered, covered in deep obsidian scales with glowing fissures between their plates. Their weapons, electromagnetic blasters surgically embedded in their forearms. Fury's team moved like a blade. Sergeant Toller and Corporal Don broke through the outer corridor, disabling automated turrets with EMP charges. The deeper they went, the more erratic the defenses became. Scripts not updating, turrets out of sync. They're routing everything through the central node, Fury said. They think bottlenecking makes it secure. It does, Toller answered. Unless someone like you shows up. They reached the core. The AI vault was locked behind a trifold encryption gate, humming with alien power signatures. Fury dropped to one knee, interfacing with the core through a neural-tethered decryptor. Foreign code flooded his display, a mess of recursive Drekovan linguistic logic. Behind him, another team member, Specialist Ren, held a proximity sensor. Hostiles en route. 90 seconds. I need 80, Fury said through clenched teeth. He moved fast, isolating subroutines, feeding in mirrored syntax, flipping command calls. Error. Error. Accept. Reject. Captain! Ren barked. They're breaching! Toller dropped a deep pack on the access hole and armed it. Hold the door. Fury hit the final string. Access granted. Files spilled across the display. Comm chains. Forged attack orders. Internal inconsistencies. And a signature, encrypted but unmistakable, linking Tavrok's faction to the falsified data streams. But then the system began purging itself. They're wiping it! Fury shouted. Ren connected a bypass drive, hands shaking. Almost! Got it! The drive blinked green. Data secured, Fury said. Now move! They fell back under fire. The jetpack detonated, sealing the vault. Surak bodies burned in the flames as the humans launched themselves toward the extraction corridor. Outside, their evac ship hovered under a shield canopy, already taking hits. They boarded with seconds to spare. Back on node post, Cage reviewed the pulled data. Bravik arrived via secure link, face illuminated by tactical readouts. Did we get it? Bravik asked. We did, and it's worse than we thought. Then we do what humans do best, Bravik said. We make it hurt. Cage turned to Gao. Mobilize the Scorch Protocol. Time to scatter their formation before they can breathe. The human response hadn't been a miracle. It was adaptation, precision, fury with direction. And now, for the first time, the Confederation's fleets were beginning to fracture. The Quetzalcoatl broke formation first. With a series of silent pulses across deep space, Admiral Yaved Cage ordered the ship into a forward pincer alongside the UED Sabaton and Osiris. Earth's first full-scale counteroffensive had begun. The battle line curved across sectors like a blade mid-swing, severing Drekvan flanks before they could regroup. Tactical feed after tactical feed lit up with markers, alien formations falling back, support ships cut off, drone carriers disabled. Drive them back, Cage said flatly. Push them into fragmentation lanes and keep them isolated. Inside the Osiris's bridge, General Gao stood over a projection with his crew, adjusting the predictive arcs. They're folding faster than expected. Their formations weren't rebuilt after the last disruption. They're not reorganizing, Cage replied from his flagship. They're trying to stall us. Simultaneously, under the radar of both fleets, a separate mission unfolded. Captain Kano Fury's transport dropped out of warp 3,000 clicks from the Thalvar relay spire, a towering Drekvan communications hub carved into the frozen crust of a moon orbiting the gas giant Meraxis. The structure stabbed through layers of ice and methane storms like a serrated obsidian tower, ringed with radar dishes and pulsar antennae. Inside Fury's dropship, 6 men prepped in silence. No motivational speeches, no promises, just war paint, checklists, and focused hands locking weapons into place. Atmosphere unstable, ionized winds near the midsection, said Specialist Wren, scanning his data board. I'm not landing on the roof of a damned alien monolith, muttered Sergeant Toller. We go in low, breach the service corridor at the base. Fury stood, armored head to toe in matte black combat plating reinforced with dampeners. In and out, 15 minutes. We don't win the war here. We just open the door for the rest of it. They launched in silence. The ship curved through the upper thermals of the moon, dodging static bursts and gravity eddies, then cut engines mid-descent to avoid sensor ping. The impact was hard, but the doors opened instantly. Snow blasted sideways. The air was thin and foul. Their HUDs adjusted to the glare, and the spire loomed above them, alive with electrical pulses running up its side like veins. They moved fast, low, disciplined. Toller planted a magnetic breach on the secondary service hatch. The charge hummed, then blew a clean ring through the metal. Fury ducked in first, clearing the hall with 2 shots. One Drekvan technician fell backward, blood steaming in the cold. The corridors inside were biomechanical, built from a blend of alloy and organic resin. The Drekvan design was functional but grotesque. Low ceilings, angular corridors, and pulsing walls like some living machine. Lights flickered. Shadows moved. Inside the central shaft, 2 Surak guards stood post, the same black-scaled Drekvan variants encountered on Varn's Gate, but heavier plated and armed with shoulder-mounted tri-beam cannons. Hold, Fury whispered. They didn't engage directly. Instead, Wren dropped a heat mimic charge down a side corridor. The explosion drew the guards off just long enough for the team to slip past and hit the freight lift. They rode it up in silence, passing floors stacked with server arrays and pulse relays. This is it, Fury said. Primary nodes at the apex, 30 meters below the dish relay. The door opened, and all hell broke loose. 3 Drekvan enforcers, clad in mirror shell armor and carrying shock spear rifles, opened fire. Toller dropped first, caught in the side. Fury responded with a flash pulse, blinding one. Wren and Private Jensen returned fire, taking another down with armor-piercing slugs. Breachers down, Fury snapped. Wren, take his kit. Plant charges on that wall. I want a new entrance. No time for subtlety, Wren muttered, attaching a shaped thermal cutter. It lit up with plasma arcs and hissed as it sliced. The wall crumbled into the core chamber, glowing with central data conduits, alien server clusters, and an enormous projection pillar feeding into the upper satellite dish. Suspended in the middle, like an altar, was the Drekvan command interface. "This is it," Ren said. "I'm in." He slotted the decryption module into a hybrid translator port. Human software collided with Drekvan logic. The screen burst into error codes, recursive loops, and failed parity checks. "Systems rejecting the bridge," Ren growled. "It's self-repairing against foreign code." Fury pulled a second decryptor from his belt. "We run both at once, overload it. What if it wipes? Then we weren't fast enough." Ren nodded. "Plugging in now." The pillar began to hum. The data started pouring. Back aboard the Quetzalcoatl, Admiral Cage monitored a closed relay from Bravik's personal office. "Status on Fury?" the Chancellor asked. "They breached the spire. No update since the interface attempt." Bravik's face remained unreadable. "They have to bring something back, or this entire push turns to smoke." "Fury doesn't fail," Cage said. "Not unless he's dead." Back in the spire, alarms screamed. The Surak were returning. Ren's decryptor blinked yellow, data sync at 68%. Then the entire interface glitched. The core began wiping itself. "No, no, no! Stop it!" Fury shouted. "Reroute! Cut the purge!" "Too late! It's encrypting the timestamp logs!" Fury moved without hesitation. He shoved his wrist into the data port, spiking his neural tether into the processor. The system fought him, flashing error code impulses, burning his internal systems with rejection shock. But Fury forced his consciousness down the line, acting as a bypass bridge. "Copy the logs. Bypass the memory gates." His voice was hoarse, his body shaking. Sparks flew from the cables. The download bar blinked once. "Data acquired." "Got it," Ren shouted. "It's all here. Tactical orders, command signatures, falsified logs, time-coded edits. Tavrok's fingerprints are all over it." But the lift outside groaned. The Surak had reached the top. "Blow the server," Fury ordered. Ren armed the charge. The team ran. They hit the drop corridor, sliding down a maintenance shaft barely wide enough for their armor. Plasma bolts sizzled past them. One skimmed Jensen's shoulder. He screamed, but held the line. They reached the evac point just as the shuttle re-engaged hover. Gunfire slammed into the hull. Fury shoved the others in and turned to fire one last shot, then jumped, catching the landing rail as the shuttle peeled off into the upper atmosphere. Behind them, the spire's upper tower exploded in a ring of blue flame, the data core consumed. The files hit node post 20 minutes later. Cage stood with Bravik as the data loaded. Visual confirmation, network logs, Drekvan military orders with anomalies everywhere. Tavrok's override keys stamped on fabricated footage. Internal memos redacted only partially, one even referencing the phrase, "coordinated catalyst for full justification." "This is it," Bravik said. "The war wasn't a response, it was pretext." "And now we bury them with their own lies," Cage replied. For the first time since the war began, Earth had proof, and they knew exactly where to send it. Inside the secure data chamber aboard Node Post, Chancellor Zach Bravik watched as the encrypted packages began uploading to hidden relay buoys scattered across 6 border sectors. The proof, raw, time-coded, signed orders from Tavrok's inner circle, was leaving Earth. "Set the destinations," Bravik ordered. "Send the files to every faction in the Confederation Council, and not through standard diplomatic lines. Use the black net. Leak it through their own resistance channels." "Routing through backdoor protocols now," confirmed Lieutenant Varen Jace, one of Bravik's trusted tech aides. "Encrypted redundancy stack built into the payload. Even if they intercept the first one, the others will get through." The moment the data left their system, Bravik turned away. "Now we wait for the cracks." It didn't take long. On the outer world of Traxel Core, home to the Rishan, the footage played in grainy flickers across a hidden warband's projection wall. The Rishan were a reptilian species, sleek, four-eyed, with wide mandibles and cobalt blue flesh, that hardened into bone ridges around adulthood. Their society, structured around honor duels and communal judgment, had reluctantly supported the war due to alliance pressure from Tavrok's bloc. But the images shook them. Direct code traces leading back to Tavrok's communications directorate, transcripts of pre-war falsification drafts, subverted timestamp chains. Reshan warlord Ka-Shatir slammed his fist into the wall console. "We were manipulated," he hissed. "Made pawns." His second-in-command, a younger male with gold-inked scales, replied, "The Drekvan will deny this." Ka-Shatir turned slowly. "Then let them. We no longer answer to lies." That same day, 2 Reshan fleets withdrew from the Confederation's staging zones near the Helix front. In orbit above Yalith Prime, a Varnathi cruiser, the Thrasknell, mutinied. The Varnathi were insectoid bipeds, tall and thin, with chitinous armor that grew in overlapping iridescent plates. Their minds operated in tri-layered logic, analytical, instinctual, and communicative, each driving independent behavior. For days, a divide had grown among their officers. When the human data reached them, the split ruptured. Commander Thir Vesh, whose lower mandibles quivered with rage, stood before his bridge crew. "The information is coherent," he stated. "The war's origin is poisoned. I will not carry blood debt for a lie." One of his adjutants, bonded by family code to a Drekvan noble, raised a weapon. The crew opened fire before he could use it. Back at Node Post, Bravik received the reports in a steady stream. Deserters, withdrawals, silence from previously aggressive fronts, but also resistance. Inside the Confederation capital on Drekhal, Tavrok's faction pushed back. Their state networks launched their own broadcasts, calling the human leak sophisticated forgeries and propaganda crafted by Earth's AI war machines. In Council Hall, the Drekvan High Custodian, a thick-bodied elder with ceremonial horns gilded in obsidian, declared, "No world shall act upon unverified transmissions. Let the Council decide what truth is." And yet, in the darker corners of the chamber, murmurs grew. Delegates from the Shavor, the Morvax, and even parts of the merchant-dominated Lorin Syndicate began calling for independent validation. Cage watched the feeds from his command deck, arms folded. "They're split," Gao said beside him. "Not openly, but the current's shifting." "It's not enough to expose the lie," Cage replied. "We have to push it to fracture." "Orders?" Bravik appeared on the secured channel. "Apply pressure. Hit them where it hurts, but don't strike to destroy. Force their allies to hesitate." Every delay becomes a spotlight on Tavrok's deception. The human fleet restructured overnight. Instead of mass counteroffensives, Earth launched selective disruption strikes. Admiral Cage dispatched the Osiris and Quetzalcoatl to intercept Drekvan supply chains in the Keldar Verge, not to destroy the cargo but to leave it drifting and exposed, its encryption intact, its manifest falsified. Human infiltration AI repackaged the data logs to reflect Tavrok's involvement, then jettisoned them where Lorin smugglers would find them. On the mining world of Fekri 9, a small force of Earth Marines stormed a Drekvan listening post, disabling its comm relays, then broadcasting a loop of Tavrok's internal orders for 4 hours straight, just long enough for neutral trading vessels to pick up the signal and rebroadcast it without realizing. Meanwhile, Bravik leveraged contacts within the Rinthi Accord, a neutral political bloc long suspicious of the Confederation's military expansions. He released select excerpts of the human evidence to Rinthi elders in private, emphasizing the manipulation without demanding open support. They responded with a statement broadcast through diplomatic relays. "We do not recognize any war justified by artifice." It wasn't a declaration against Tavrok, but it wasn't for him either. Back on Drekhal, the fracture lines deepened. In an emergency gathering, the council chamber roared with dissonant voices. The Drekvan delegation demanded solidarity. The Reshan accused them of deception. The Shavor, tall serpentine bipeds with faceless golden helms and cybernetic vocalizers, spoke in synchronized monotone. Evidence contradicts official narrative. Probability of manipulation exceeds tolerable limits. The Confederation speaker pounded his staff. "We are at war. Our blood has been spilled." To which the Varnathi envoy, speaking through triple-layered choral modulation, responded, "And how much of that blood was drawn under false light?" Silence fell. From his private chamber aboard Node Post, Bravik watched the transmission. Cage stood nearby, arms crossed. "We've cracked the wall," Cage said. "Not enough to break it yet." Bravik's tone was firm. "Then we press." He turned to Vera Delane. "Send new fragments, the ones we held back. Make sure they land on the public relays this time, not the encrypted lines. We're not leaking anymore. We're broadcasting." Delane hesitated. "That'll be an open challenge." Bravik didn't blink. "Good. Let them try to bury the truth again. This time the galaxy's watching." A Drekhavan war banner over the Council citadel on Drekhal flickered, distorted by electromagnetic interference. Transmission delays, signal collisions, system-wide inconsistencies. What had once been the galaxy's most disciplined coalition was now choking on its own fragmentation. The Confederation was unraveling. On border world comms across 3 sectors, ships began receiving irregular directives. In one message, Tavrok's voice demanded continued aggression. In another, a Drekhavan fleet admiral claimed a ceasefire had been approved. In yet another, a Varnathi officer declared complete operational disengagement, citing moral grounds. Inside Node Post, Chancellor Bravik reviewed intercepted traffic with Admiral Cage. The holomap was no longer red versus blue. It was fractured, messy. Whole squadrons blinking out of formation without a trace. 4 more fleets gone dark, Vera Delane reported. The Lorin Syndicate has rerouted its trade flotillas away from Drekhavan space, and 2 Morvax ships just defected to the neutral zone. Cage studied the chaos with grim satisfaction. "The Confederation's bleeding from the inside." Bravik nodded. "And Tavrok knows it." Desperate to stem the collapse, Tavrok's faction launched a counter-information blitz. New messages saturated the Council's private networks. Holographic testimonies from Drekhavan loyalists, aggressive dismissals of the human revelations, even staged footage meant to depict humans faking the very evidence they had leaked. But it came too late. The fracture lines had already spread beyond containment. In the border system of Nyrak, a Rishan commander publicly refused to accept new deployment orders from Tavrok's office. On Kelvarun, the Shavor's Deep Logic Assembly declared Tavrok's authority compromised by pre-war manipulation and unquantifiable motive bias. Dozens of neutral systems began freezing Drekhavan assets. Embassies went dark. Smuggling channels overflowed with leaked footage and fractured encryption keys from Tavrok's intelligence bureau. The Confederation's core was shattering. Cage didn't wait for the collapse to finish. He would deliver the final blow. In the silence of the command deck aboard the UED Osiris, he addressed a full task force, fleet commanders from across UED's surviving forces, connected via tight beam encryption. The Drekhavan still hold 5 key control centers in the Raylor belt, Cage said. Those installations link the remnants of Tavrok's faction to their outer strike groups. If we take them down now, they lose cohesion. Gao spoke up from the Quetzalcoatl's bridge. The enemy's disoriented, not blind. They'll resist. That's why we go in fast, hard, and together. We strike all 5 sites in sync. The plan was codenamed Operation Iron Veil. At 04:19 UTC, Earth time, the human fleet split into 5 coordinated wings. Cage led the primary assault personally aboard the Osiris. The other 4, commanded by Generals Gao, Tan, Raiden, and Commander Cillian Noor, each moved into position across a curved offensive front designed to fracture enemy coordination. The first target was Kar Ravak Station. The structure floated above a volcanic moon, layered in Drekhavan armor plating and covered in flak arrays. Its orbital guns engaged before the Osiris was in visual range. launching plasma clusters wide across the approach vector. "Deploy chaff shield and pulse dampeners," Cage ordered. "Line us up." His wing dropped from warp in perfect formation, hugging the magnetic fields of the moon's upper crust to avoid direct locks. The Osiris launched its drone wings, which swarmed upward in a rolling wall, not to attack, but to jam the enemy's optics. Within 20 seconds, the UED Sabaton arrived from the far side, its cannons lit in bright pulses. The first barrage from Sabaton ripped a hole through the outer defense ring. "Push through," Cage ordered. In one maneuver, the Osiris spun upward, rolled over the station's top shell, and deployed breaching pods into the command node. On impact, the Marines poured out. Close-quarters fighting ignited in the corridors. Surak defenders, Drekavan bred for war, with heavy limbs and jaws like crush clamps, charged into the breach. Captain Thorne, leading the Marine unit, detonated 2 floor charges that collapsed the corridor and separated the Surak into blind zones. His squad slipped around through the station's venting shafts and emerged in the command dome. 2 minutes later, the station's power core detonated. Kar Ravak was gone. Across the belt, Gao's fleet crippled the Charan relay, a data spine that held communications to the Drekavan frontier forces. His ships deployed pulse interference torpedoes that disoriented enemy sensors long enough for stealth units to breach the relay's hull and inject cascading virus code. The station tore itself apart trying to self-correct. On the ground in the Brel system, General Ryden deployed Earth's newest gravity piercer ordnance, a projectile that burrowed into planetary soil, destabilized magnetic flow, and caused infrastructure collapse without direct loss of life. His target was a Drekvan command nexus built into a basalt mountain, an installation thought to be impervious to orbital fire. It took 6 minutes to reduce it to rubble. Tavrok, isolated in the high chambers of the Confederation spire, received fractured updates. Every communication had lag, interference, or conflicting data. Some ships still reported victory. Others were already gone. He slammed his clawed fist into the control dais. "We are the Confederation," he roared. "Their worlds exist because of our unity. Their cultures survive by our protection." No one in the chamber responded. His inner circle had shrunk. Generals who once stood by him were absent. Advisors stopped returning his pings. Even the surveillance officers lowered their heads. "Order the reserves to engage," Tavrok demanded. "Launch a planetary strike against the Terran colonies. Show them what happens to liars." But there were no more reserves. His commands were sent. No one acted. Back at Node Post, Bravik reviewed the most recent feed from Drekhal, an emergency meeting of council members with nearly half the seats vacant. The rest argued, some furious, some silent, some visibly shaken. "It's done," Bravik said. "Not yet," Cage replied, his voice calm. "They started this war with fire. They'll end it only when we put it out at the source." "And the source," Bravik nodded, "is still breathing." Cage turned back toward the operations table. "Then we hunt Tavrok. No more messages, no more politics. We end it with steel." The Drekavan listening station on Ural's drift erupted in flames as the UED strike team extracted under fire, its upper decks collapsing into atmosphere. Tavrok's last outpost in the outer ring was gone. Across the galaxy, in the dying light of a fractured confederation, only a handful of strongholds remained loyal to him. Scattered outposts, drifting stations, minor warlords clinging to propaganda and fear. But they were surrounded, cut off, and their numbers were thinning fast. Inside a hidden command spire on the ice planet Vekral, Emissary Tavrok stood before a half-lit holotable, his fingers curled into the edge. His voice, once commanding, now bordered on frantic. "They are weak," he snarled, transmitting across secured channels to a dwindling set of loyal commanders. "They hide behind lies and manipulation, but we are purity, order, power. Stay the course, and we will reclaim the stars." On the other end, the holofeed flickered. Commander Rovash, a high-ranking Varnathi officer with slanted gold chitin and elongated ocular plates, replied in a slow, hollow tone. "You promised a crusade of truth. What we see now is desperation. "We stand for survival," Tavrok barked. "They are chaos. They are decay." Rovash's mandibles clicked once. "You've become what you claimed to fight." The line cut. Another defection. Tavrok turned to his remaining advisors, pale-faced, silent. Some were Drekovan, others were mercenaries or ideologues from broken coalitions. All looked uncertain. He slammed his clawed hand into the table, cracking the display. "Then we fight alone." Back on Node Post, Chancellor Bravik appeared on secure link across 12 major systems. The final coordination call had begun. Representatives from the Rishan, Shavor, Lauren Syndicate, Morvax Triumvirate, and 6 independent worlds had joined. Each leader's image hovered inside the central strategy chamber, rendered in precise holographic detail. Warlord Kashatir of the Rishan adjusted the hilt of his ceremonial blade before speaking. "We sever all diplomatic and military ties with Tavrok's faction. Our ships will not shield his escape." The Shavor delegate, faceless beneath a polished golden mask, spoke in harmonized distortion. "The construct of deception has collapsed. There is no sanctuary for dishonor." Bravik didn't celebrate. He nodded once. "Thank you. Earth will carry out the final operation. Alone, if necessary." Operation Final Lock activated at Aero 300 UED time. Admiral Yaved Cage boarded the Osiris in full battle gear, accompanied by a kill team handpicked from veterans of the initial defense of Ceres Way, Mars's counteroffensive, and the raid on Varn's Gate. Leading them was Commander Holt Merrick, a blunt-edged tactical specialist known for breaching unbreachable targets. Target? Vekral. Satellite data confirmed Tavrok's presence. The ice planet, once a listening post buried beneath kilometers of frozen crust, had been converted into a command center outfitted with Drekovan shielding, subterranean railguns, and a cloaked hangar used for emergency escape vectors. But it wouldn't be enough. The assault began with a coordinated orbital descent. The Osiris, Quetzalcoatl, and Fenrir dropped into low orbit, shielded by an electromagnetic smokescreen launched by drones seeded hours before the strike. Cage stood on the Osiris's bridge, surrounded by the storm of commands and relayed sensor pulses. "Punch through their rail cannons. Use the Sabaton's prow as cover," he ordered. On cue, the Sabaton descended first, taking brutal fire along its reinforced hull. It absorbed 3 direct impacts before returning a full barrage, cracking Vekral's sky shield and opening a path. "Ground team, go," Cage said. "Hit the spire. Bring him back alive if you can. If not, terminate." Merrick's team landed in a trench just outside the outer shell of the Drekovan command complex. The wind screamed across the surface, dragging frozen debris like shrapnel. Massive, jagged structures protruded from the ice. Alien defensive towers, grown more than built, glistening with frost and dried blood. "Thermal sensors show 30-plus signatures inside," one of the scouts said, scanning through his visor. "We breach anyway," Merrick replied. "Doors or walls doesn't matter." They didn't wait. They placed charges at the east entrance, blew a hole through the armored gate, and stormed the interior. The defenders were Drekovan purists, zealots who'd refused to believe the leaks, even after seeing them. Their armor was archaic, ceremonial, engraved with old glyphs. They fought with fury, not coordination. Merrick's team moved like water, sweeping room by room, clearing the spire from the base up. Plasma-scorched walls echoing through the stone-metal corridors. Explosions rocked the far levels. Finally, they reached the command chamber. Tavrok stood at the far end, draped in a ceremonial war cape, holding a long, blade-like rifle. "You should not have come," he said. "I built this galaxy." Merrick stepped forward. "You buried it." Tavrok fired first. The round sliced past Merrick's shoulder, killing the man behind him. 2 other soldiers opened fire. One missed, the other caught Tavrok in the leg. He fell, roared, and tried to crawl for a detonator strapped beneath the dais. Merrick kicked it away, leveled his rifle, and paused. Cage's voice came over comms. Alive, if possible. Tavrok stared at Merrick, bloody and defiant. You're nothing. Just clever beasts with sharp teeth. Merrick stunned him. The Osiris lifted off 2 hours later, carrying Tavrok and 4 remaining loyalists in high-security stasis. The storm above Vechral began to break, light cutting across the jagged ice. From orbit, Cage watched the silent planet grow smaller. Transmit secure confirmation to Node Post, he said. Target secured. The war's final phase has begun. The Osiris exited the Vechral system with Tavrok in stasis, and the last loyalist officers shackled in sealed holding units. Behind them, the frozen command spire smoldered beneath the planet's jagged clouds. Silence followed, not just in the comms, but across every warfront still flickering with tension. 3 days later, the last Drekovan-aligned skirmish groups vanished from UED sensors. They didn't retreat. They simply stopped responding, shut down their engines, and disappeared into deep space. Disbanded or surrendered, it didn't matter. The war, for all intents, was over. The Confederation faction that had lit the fire had collapsed. Inside a decommissioned mining station orbiting a dwarf star in the Selkan Drift, Tavrok's remaining command cadre gathered in secret. Emissary Varun, one of Tavrok's oldest supporters, a thick-jawed Drekvan with a faded war crest and a mechanical eye, paced in the dark chamber. Outposts gone, funds frozen, our relay nodes hijacked, he muttered. We still have contacts. The Seldari cartel. They've already denounced us, another Drekvan interrupted. We begged them an hour ago. Then the Naraxi clade. The Naraxi declared for neutrality 2 days ago. The room fell silent. Outside, the mining station's outer ring flickered under power strain. The generators weren't designed for long-term occupation. This wasn't a fortress. It was desperation with walls. Tavrok sat slumped in the center, wrists still marked from the stun binders removed only hours ago. He looked nothing like the iron voice that once echoed across the galaxy. His ceremonial armor had been stripped away, his posture hunched, claws twitching faintly. He stared at the floor, as if expecting it to open and swallow him. They will come, Tavrok said, his voice low, rasped. They have to. They can't survive without us. Varun turned to him, face pale. They don't need us. They never did. They just stopped being afraid. Tavrok's eyes lifted, yellow and bloodshot. You think they'll let us rot? After what we know? After what I've seen? The lights in the room died with a heavy clunk. A moment later, emergency red strobes lit the chamber, and every terminal lit up with the UED crest. Admiral Yavid Cage stood aboard the Quetzalcoatl, watching the feed from the infiltration team moving through the mining station's lower levels. They encountered no resistance. Doors were left open, weapons discarded. Most of the crew had abandoned the station before the humans arrived. Target confirmed, came the voice of Sergeant Ames, leading the entry unit. Tavrok and 3 high-value hostiles located in the command chamber. No defenses, no transmissions. They're boxed in. Cage leaned forward, voice calm. No executions. Bring them in breathing. Inside the station, boots echoed as Ames' men advanced. Tavrok didn't raise his head. Varun stood once, started toward the doorway, then stopped, realizing the fight had long since left the room. The soldiers cuffed them in silence. No resistance, no last words. Only the dull hum of defeat. Back on Node Post, Chancellor Zach Bravik received the confirmation code personally from Admiral Cage. Targets secured, Cage said, his expression cold. They're not leaders anymore, just prisoners. Bravik nodded once. Prepare the link. The transmission went live across every known relay station. Across neutral zones, allied planets, former enemy territories, and shattered outposts. The same image appeared on every comm screen, the UED emblem, then the face of Chancellor Bravik, stoic, illuminated by the blue of the Node Post command chamber. This is Chancellor Zach Bravik of the United Earth Defense. I address not only the citizens of Earth, but every species, every colony, and every sovereign system affected by this war. He paused. Today, emissary Tavrok and the last commanders of the rogue Drekovan faction were captured by UED forces in the Selkan Drift. They are no longer a threat. Their lies, their manipulations, and their campaign of genocide have ended. Behind him, images scrolled, proof of the forged transmissions, the faked footage, the war plans written before the first accusation was made. This conflict began with deception. It was waged in blood, but it ends today. Bravik's voice was sharp, not theatrical, measured, direct. Earth does not seek conquest. We did not seek vengeance. We defended our species against annihilation, and we endured. Across every major system, species of every kind watched in silence. Rishan warlords, Shah-Vor delegates, Lorin merchants, independent miners on moons with no names. Some bowed their heads, some raised clenched fists, some simply watched, wordless. To those who stood with truth, Bravik continued, we offer thanks. To those who doubted, we offer proof. And to all peoples of the galaxy, we offer peace. He stepped back. Let us build something that can't be twisted. Let us build it together. The feed ended. On the outer rim, a battered Varnathi scout ship hovered above a cold moon. The crew said nothing as the message replayed. Their captain, Thir Vesh, turned off the screen and gave a simple order. Set course. Earth. On the Rishan homeworld, Kashatir sheathed his ceremonial blade. The age of fear has passed. Inside a silent chamber on Drekhal, the Drekvan High Custodian stood alone, watching the transmission. He did not speak. He simply turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the great war crest of his people behind. In a command room lit only by stars, Admiral Yaved Cage stood beside Bravik, arms folded, watching the galaxy shift one breath at a time. They'll never see us the same again, Cage said. Bravik nodded. Good. And outside Node Post, in the dark between stars, no more warships came, only silence and peace. Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. Hope you had a great time with the story. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really makes a huge difference to the channel. And hey, I've got something else for you. I've chosen another story that I think you'll really enjoy. Just click the card right here, or hit this one to jump into the full playlist. See you in the next one.